This is Dan Hess, and you are listening to Pixelated Audio, and today we're doing Pilotwings 64.
All right, welcome to Pixelated Audio, a podcast focusing on game audio, its history, and the people behind it. Today, we are joined by a very special guest, the musician Dan Hess, the composer behind Pilotwings 64 on the N64.
Say hello, Dan.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, we've already been bantering for like 15 minutes, but we're also joined by another friend of ours, Ian Cowell. So Ian was on a show many, many moons ago at MagWest 2 talking about some of his favorite music. He's a VGM guitarist, musician. He has his own band, and he writes music in a very laid-back dad rock style.
Dad rock
right?
style.
Yeah, I bring some dad energy to it. I have a couple offspring, so I think it works its way into my modality, even though I've been doing it since before they existed. But yes, it's a good one, Gene. Thank you.
I wrote Pat Metheny and Weird Al, so if you listen to his music, you'll get that vibe, I think.
That was Gene's notes to me. It's on my first solo show, and he's like, "Listen, man, you gotta be Pat Metheny meets Weird Al. It's something."
You got to read what he wrote about himself on his webpage, how he describes himself. Have you seen that, you guys?
I have, yeah.
The MIDI sexual amalgam of every guilty pleasure you've ever had. That's just the best line, man.
Thanks, Dan.
Anyway, so we've been wanting to do a focus on this game for a long time. We've had a lot of requests from listeners, and so it's so fun and interesting because this all happened like within like the last few days. We're like, hey, why don't we just do an episode right now with Ian's got some stuff coming out. He's in contact with Dan. We'll just tie things together and make it happen. So it's really awesome that we could all get together today. There's 4 of us. It's going to be a little chaotic, but we got a lot to go over.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Pilotwings 64.
Let's do it.
All right.
Who wants to give what is the game? What is Pilotwings 64? Brian, you got this?
Yeah. Well, Pilotwings is the predecessor to, the successor to Pilotwings on the Super Nintendo. It was a launch title that was released with the debut of the console, the N64, co-developed by Nintendo. And they worked with a visual technology group called Paradigm Simulation. We'll talk about more about them in a minute here. But it was one of 3 launch titles for the N64 in Japan, as well as Europe. And then I think the US only had 2 launch titles. It was Mario 64 and Pilotwings 64, if I remember correctly. And we'll get more into the company aspect about it, but that's a really big feat for an American company to partner with Nintendo on the release of a launch title, which historically wasn't really happening in the game industry before. So this is a really big deal, a big feat.
It was a big feat just to get to market with it. We were the only other company that made it out of 10. That's why you had 2 launch titles instead of 11.
Yeah, I'm sure. So again, released in 1996, I think in Europe 97, but it's a flight simulation. And if you played Pilotwings, any of the other Pilotwings games, they're like an arcadey simulation that you can be in a jetpack or a hang glider and or a biplane and fly around, go through different obstacles, and it's just a lot of fun. It's really chill, and the music is incredible. Across all the games, and it's also really fitting for the style. It's very laid back, got a lot of nice jazz vibes, and so we're gonna have a lot of fun going through today with Dan and Ian.
Awesome.
You got jazz vibes and dad vibes. All the vibes are coming out.
Oh man.
Play us off something, Dan. You got that Rhodes there?
Oh sure.
Oh yeah, play us a little jam.
Welcome to Pixelated Audio.
Happy holidays, everyone. This is going to be so much fun when it comes out.
Let's talk about Paradigm Entertainment for a little bit. They're responsible for a few different titles, and actually they went up pretty long. We were looking last night, Gene and I. It wasn't just Pilotwings. There was Aerofighters Assault. A few other N64 games, F-1 World Grand Prix that Dan also did the soundtrack for.
Yeah, and the Beetle Racing.
Beetle Venture Racing, which is a huge favorite of James, another host of the show.
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah,
Tell my
Hold
buddy
up,
that.
Dan. You did Beetle Adventure
No,
Racing?
no, I didn't, but our company did.
The company
Oh,
did,
shit.
yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, good on Paradigm. That's a fun game.
Yeah, good stuff. Good
and
stuff.
then there was Spy Hunter for
The PS2 era, basically. Yeah.
PS2
Yeah,
era,
yeah.
Stuntman Ignition, and then
Stuntman Ignition. That was a great. Did you guys play that game?
I did on
Was
Xbox.
addicting.
It's a lot of fun. Is that the one where you're like recreating Hollywood scenes? Like you got to drive
Yeah.
through a flaming building kind of stuff?
It's once you start playing it, you can't stop because you watch your scenes. You're like, yeah, that was lame. When I come around that corner, I need to do something there because you watch your playback after you've done it, right? Oh, that's just a great game.
yeah, see, I think that was like that period where like I had moved like on like the other side of the planet, so like I
Yeah.
was just not like following the stuff as much.
Sure.
But yeah, I think Paradigm was doing stuff until
About 2006, yeah.
2006?
They were acquired by a couple of companies and then mergers and acquisitions and stuff, yeah.
It was earlier than that, I think. I think he was out by 2000. So if they were doing something after that, then they were already acquired by basically what would have been Atari, right?
Atari, yeah.
Infogrames, France.
THQ or Atari or something like that.
Well, you're the expert here. Tell us about Paradigm Simulations and then later Entertainment.
Paradigm Simulation really was a supremely innovative company, and I'm really proud of everybody involved. Kind of was at my beginning into high tech because my best friend and I grew up wanting to build video games, and he was this brilliant artist and just a brilliant mind in general. And then his parents said, well, you're an artist, but you're probably not going to make any money in art. But he also had a great technical brain. So he decided he was going to go into computer art. Now, this is 1982 when he decided this. And there really wasn't much of a computer art scene, right? It was just starting.
It's like the money for nothing video at this point.
Right. He ended up finding out that there was only 2 schools, I think, in the country that even offered a computer graphics degree. One of them was Syracuse. So he went to Syracuse, came out with this degree. What am I going to do with it? And this is a sidetrack. I found out later he actually got a job offer right out of school. This small startup in New York. Super excited about it. They were going to do like animation, and he would have been like employee number 6 or something like that. And then the weekend he was planning, I hope I don't mistell this, but the weekend he was planning to leave for the job. He'd already had the interview, everything was good. They said, oh, we're going to go a different direction. Somebody's nephew or whatever. That little company was Pixar.
Oh, wow.
He would have been like employee number 6 at Pixar. But, you don't know those things, what was going to happen. He went down and got a job at a company called Merit and outside of Dallas. And they did flight simulators. And back then, and before CGI started to become what it is now, everything was line graphics. Just looked horrible, right? So they're like, can you make our flight simulators look a little more realistic? And that was his job. And he was really good at it. And they got involved in this huge military a contract, a bid. Pretty much anybody who was in the industry did. And it was called CCTT. It was giant video games teaching people to fight in tanks and planes. Everything was going to be connected over some kind of network and all around the world. So they get into this thing and he calls me. He says, our video's looking great, but our audio guys are clueless. They have no idea what they're doing. They are like using mono sound and there's like 4 sounds. I want you to like get in a teleconference and talk to these guys. I was still a kid though. I just had the concept that these guys all had white lab coats on and knew more than I did, right? And it took a lot of convincing to get on a teleconference. But once I did, I'm like, yeah, these guys this is not going to work what they want to do. And basically after a conversation with them, I whiteboarded an idea I thought would work. And they said, well, great. Can you do it for us? And no, I don't think so. But I ended up saying yes eventually and went down and we built the world's first real-time controllable 3D sound system, basically. So you could put as many speakers up as you wanted, and your simulation program would give all the details to the sound system about what it was and how it was moving, and then our sound system would react and actually play those sounds in real time, right? And then nothing like that had ever existed. And they lost the contract. They got out of the technology. They didn't think it had a play. It was never going to go anywhere. And so my friend and my two really close friends, Wes Hoffman, Mike Enkeldinger, and one more, Ron Topol, left the company, asked me to be a fourth and start Paradigm. And then to recreate that sound system and eventually a visual system. And now that became the focal point for Paradigm simulation. And they did very well, even though my wife at the time didn't want to go to Dallas, Texas. So I only did my stuff from afar, and I never became a principal of the company. Somebody kicked me in the ass for that one. They did quite well. And eventually, through all these different simulations, which are really just video games, right? We were basically building, training video games. We got the offer from Nintendo because of our close relationship with SGI. Do you guys remember who SGI is?
Oh, yeah.
Silicon Graphics. Yeah, they were a big deal around here.
They were the deal.
I mean, everybody had a workstation from SGI, if I'm remembering correctly, back in those days.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. You
had to. If you're in that industry, you couldn't draw things without an SGI that was serious. So they had these huge workstations that were like, I don't know, $250,000 things about the size of refrigerators, right? I think the one was the Skywriter when we were doing our startup with, and they knew that they couldn't sell hardware without software. So they found out about Paradigm, that they were doing the startup. They knew who these guys were, and they said, "Fine, we're going to give you workstations." So my buddy in his apartment had like $300,000 worth of hardware in a side room, and that's where we started Paradigm. Doing all the coding on those things. But because of that close relationship, and these guys were always pushing that hardware, they were probably the ones that brought Paradigm up to Nintendo, because Nintendo went to SGI to say, if we give you this ginormous purchase order, what can you build us that can hit these specs so we can do 3D games, for this price? And they came up to some arrangement. I don't know the details, but I know that it worked, and that they were on their path to make the hardware, Wow. But that's anyways how Paradigm Entertainment came. It was a spinoff of Paradigm Simulation.
I'm going to ask you a super deep cut question because I'm a massive nerd here. So I read this interview that you did with Nintendo Life, and you mentioned that you had worked on the music for Magic Edge. I don't think anybody who wasn't around I know, right? I went to like a field trip to this thing when I was like 9 years old.
Are you going to wear your Magic Edge?
I don't have the hat anymore. It's in my parents' house.
God.
I have this like red hat with a black brim that says Magic Edge on it. I'm like, it was amazing.
My God,
the future
you did
of technology.
You're in the little egg, right? They put you in the little pod, right?
Yeah, in the warehouse in Mountain View. And then it was gone like the next year. So like nobody knows what I'm talking about.
I can't believe you were actually a part of that. That's crazy to me.
Yeah. No,
I apologize because I wrote all this music for it. Like they had me do all these tunes, and they literally realized they had no memory for music, so they played the same thing over and over, like 2 bars. So anything you heard, which by the way, the song that was actually the same song, it became what's it? Wait, it's became Hang Glider. Yes,
nice.
The melody from that became Hang Glider because somebody at Paradigm played these tracks to Wada-san, who was the director of Pilotwings, before they met me, to say, well, he's done some work for us. What has he done? Wow, we don't have a lot of music. Oh, we have this thing from Magic Edge. And he actually liked it. He said, can you work that into the game somehow? And it was kind of guitar-y and drummy, right? Well, okay, I'll try. And that's what became, the melody made its way into the Hang Glider theme. Anyways.
I'm so glad I asked.
That's crazy that you even know what Magic Edge is.
I looked up articles. They were gone by 96. So it's like nobody around here, even my friends, don't know what I'm talking about.
No. You were probably in the only place in the country where you could have been a part of that. So crazy.
I swear it's real. Bernstein Bears.
I know, right?
Oh my God, that is great. I can't wait to tell my buddy.
Let's go ahead and get into a track before we end up talking for 3 hours and don't play any music.
Right?
Do you want to start with the game menu, Gene?
Sure,
Sound
let's
good?
jump in.
All right, let's do it. All right, that was Game Menu from Pilotwings 64, composed by Dan Hess.
All right, I'm ready to get started. I want to change my sound options. I want to make this louder.
What are you talking about?
I want to make it stereo instead of mono. I think that was an option back in the day. It was on the Super Nintendo.
Somebody said that you could like play all the audio tracks if you just wanted to go. There was some way you could just listen to the different tracks. Is that? I didn't know that at the time. Could you do that in the game?
Was there a sound test, Brian?
That's what I mean.
Maybe I don't remember seeing one, but maybe there was like a Game Genie or something you could.
Okay, probably
put on or something. Yeah. Who knows?
Because there were songs I forgot about.
Dan, do you ever think about like how many dorm rooms at like Iowa State might have had a sound test going for your stuff? The room's all cloudy.
I had a couple people write to me that they would have their kids get to a certain point in a game and leave it on. Like, can I just get, okay, that's good. You can go to bed now. And they just like leave the music on for Birdman or whatever song they were listening to.
Yeah.
That tripped me out a little bit. That tripped me out. I was not really thinking when the game was released that these songs are going to play for hours. I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to listen to these things for the entire time they play the game. It's really so different, man.
Ian, when did you first play Pilotwings 64? Is like you grew up with it too, right?
Yeah, I was not good at it at all. I think that's also why Birdman stuck with me and so many people, is that it's a free-flying zone. Just relax, And I didn't play it in 96. Full transparency here, I didn't get a N64 until 97. They were very hard to find that first year.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you, actually. I didn't get all my friends got one, and I didn't get one. I didn't have enough money saved up, and I was in like a freshman in high school or something like that. But
oh man,
yeah, all my friends had Mario, Pilotwings, and then a few of the other games that had come out just several weeks later or whatever. But yeah, like I just played at their house all the time.
Exactly.
Right.
The cool friends, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It was great. It was, the N64 is, when you're like 8 or 9, no matter what system you get, unless it's probably like a Jaguar, you're pretty stoked on, and I think I first played Pilotwings in 98. Yeah, because I got it in Christmas. And dude, yeah, I mean, even then, game music is always something that's stuck around. Obviously, that's why we're here doing this podcast, right?
Right.
But there's something about that, like Dan said, it's just got this groove to it. It's well, actually, Dan, cut this part out too. You said that in the other podcast. My time is all, as Dan said, in another time zone at another time here, not on this.
That's so funny. That was so fun. I met Ian on a podcast with Karen from Night Ride FM.
Oh, right.
You
Yeah. It's more like the synthwave world. Yeah.
Yeah. And we had a ball just doing what we're doing now. And it just kind of rambled on. It's a good time. I'm like, God, we've had this for like 2 hours. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. We haven't even gotten to a question yet.
Exactly.
I know, right? Oh, let's play our second track, right?
Right.
Gene, help me out here. Ask me a question.
I don't know
again.
what you're going on.
Yeah,
here.
we don't.
N64 rules. Yes. Okay. Hold on.
Just
Brian, can you restate that for me, dude? I'm so sorry.
No. It's all good.
I think we got most of it.
No,
there.
I was just, I was just curious. So you said you got a N64 in 97.
Yeah.
In 98, you probably started playing Pilotwings, and game audio just in general. It's one of those things that has kind of persisted over time. I think Dan mentioned this before we even started like recording, was saying that the audio has outlived the game in many aspects, because we're here we are talking about the music, but I haven't actually played the game in years.
Should I remind people how long it's been, or is that making us all feel old?
No, don't even say it.
Oh, gee.
Don't even say
a long time.
It's been a while.
Let's get into our next track here. This is Mission Menu. We'll be right back.
Oh, it's a right.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
I love that.
You know,
I love having that live stuff going on. It's awesome.
That is staying in, by the way.
Oh yeah.
I want to give a thanks to Lorne Michaels, everyone here on.
That was Mission Menu. This was an important one for me because I was really into jazz in high school. I was in jazz band and I was starting to learn more about the classics. My parents were into jazz and stuff like that, funk and I would kind of riff off of a lot of these songs myself. Just kind of
cool.
like hum as I was playing, make my own little like lyrics and do stuff.
Yeah.
And,
Improvise.
and a lot of these tracks they give you so much room to do that. So it's really great.
True. Probably because I was also limited to a certain amount of voices which means how many notes I can play, because anything I did in audio took away from video, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, these systems were pretty archaic by today's standards, and we were triggering everything you hear in that game. Every sound is a little sample. And if I wanted an instrument, I have to have, multiple samples of notes that hold so I can play them like an instrument, right? So everything had to fit in less than a meg. I think I had 800K for every sound that was going to be in the game musically. And then I had to make little sequences that triggered them. And then I started making these sequences that I liked, and they're like, oh, well, that's good, but you're going to have to cut out. It's like that Amadeus scene, right? Too many notes. They keep taking things away from me. So it just ended up being more of a groove with a very simple melody over it. It's all you could really do without taking away frames from the video guys. That's all they cared about.
We've talked about our love-hate relationship with the N64 sound hardware just because of the way, like it had the potential to be really good, but I just think that it wasn't designed with music as forefront as Nintendo's other systems. And so
definitely,
I think, unfortunately, music with a lot more samples and stuff like that had to lower the sample rate. And so you kind of get this kind of,
graininess
to it. And that kind of takes away from it. But, again, back then, it still sounded great to me. So
I fought that hard too. Somebody asked me one time why Pilotwings sounded different. I'm a sound designer, so I know how to squeeze every little audio quality out of everything possible thing I could. That's why some of those tracks sound a little more lush than some of the other tracks that were available on other games. But the what I really missed is a synth chip. Like, all those other systems had little synth chips you could I'm a long time synth maniac, so I would have had a ball with that stuff. When you sample record a synthesizer and try to play it back, it doesn't sound the same and it doesn't have the flexibility of what a real synthesizer has, so that was a huge limitation for that system in my eyes.
I think Brian alluded to it as well. The memory thing meant that you had to fight, I think, for resources with video. So you were probably, I've read a little bit about this. It sounded like you had a great relationship with your lead dev, but that isn't always the case. So that's why there's so much variability in the N64.
I did have, I had the fortunate experience to have great relationships with both the developers on the Paradigm side. They were basically family for me, and Wada-san and the Nintendo folks that came in were really in my corner. I mean, they actually, when I came down to meet them all. And at the time, the game was just, it's going to be on an island and we're going to do things on an island. I mean, there was really no plan, but they had some sketches of the characters, some pre-sketches. And I looked at them and I thought, these things look funky to me. This is screaming for something funky, all those elongated bodies and the chick with the big boobs. Anyways, who I'm talking about. I just went home and I wrote all this stuff, and I knew that it was a good chance it was not going to be accepted because they didn't have anything groovy, any groove-based music in any of the Nintendo tracks to that point. But screw it. I wrote, a dozen songs or so, and I came down and I thought, okay, I'm not sure the Japanese team is going to be into this. Well, it was just the opposite. The Americans didn't like it. And Wada did. Wada went, he looked at me and he gave me the green light on everything that I wrote and said, go keep going. So that's, if it wouldn't have been for Wada's direction and acceptance, I think this would have been a very different soundtrack.
That's incredible, because I would have just expected I can't say I would have expected the opposite, but I wouldn't have expected the immediate buy-in.
Me either.
From, we hear about Japanese companies in the 90s and stuff like that are very protective of their IPs and their sound quality and all this stuff.
Very particular about how they want things done too.
Right.
Yeah, I know things have changed a lot, but in the 90s there was a lot more of this expectation, like, there's the American devs and there's the Japanese devs,
Right.
Well, it's almost like they're like the Abbey Road over there too. You look at pictures of the old Capcom sound team, and like you're talking about with lab coats on.
Exactly.
It has to be perfect.
Yeah. I guess I had that also in my mind that was what we were going to be fighting. I was actually expecting there to be 2 different versions of audio for the game, but I just don't think, with the limitation of a time frame for one thing and ROM size, it just wasn't feasible. So they, luckily for me, I think they stuck with just one sound set, one track set, for the game worldwide. And I do get I get great comments. People write me from all over the world. It is it's insane to me, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate it and love to hear from people that said, "I picked up the bass because of you," or
that's awesome.
I didn't know anything about funk or anything, but now I'm listening to all this great stuff, Sly and Family Stone, because of this Pilotwings soundtrack, and that's the best, man. Having and being able to talk to you guys just because of this game.
Yeah, what an amazing reach that you got, probably without expecting, right? Like there's a lot of and it's so well remembered too. This later on. Let's get into another track here. This is Hang Glider. This is a great one. So we'll be right back.
There's your magic edge thing.
I know, right?
That's where
I'll
that
definitely
came
make
from.
sure to bring that back up.
Like how that how'd that sound good?
All right, that was Hang Glider, composed by Dan Hess for the N64 version of Pilotwings.
That is a lovely track, and I just want to say this comment that we got from our chat, which is, we have a lot of regulars, and this is the quote here. This isn't a question, but I just want to say, I know Birdman gets a lot of love, and deservedly so, but I feel like Hang Glider is one of the most relaxing and beautiful songs from this console generation, which I agree. It's a wonderful song.
Electric Boogaloo, yeah.
Yeah, and it's from Magic Edge, man. So double bonus, everybody.
It was the inspiration. It was. I had a lot of fun making that track, too.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, there's so much variety in the soundtrack for starters, and this one's so airy. I mean, even more so than some of the other ones.
And it had to be, right? I mean, that's we were sitting here watching these, playing the game as it existed at the time, and that's what you felt like. It's whatever had to be kind of airy and kind of bouncy, like, you know, you're floating around, but it's not as serene as what Birdman was going to be. You know, it just was a lot of fun. It's fun to put the game on, just sit there and play things that are just, you're feeling. Every once in a while you'll come across something, oh, that feels right. You know, you expand works on it, and maybe it becomes a track, maybe it doesn't, you know.
Yeah, I mean, because of the diversity and the different sounds that you were able to bring to this soundtrack, why don't we get into some of your background a little bit? Like, tell us about yourself, like how you got into, you know, music in general, because you've been doing it for a while before this.
Yeah, I took to piano pretty much as, I don't remember not playing a piano in my life. I just was playing. My grandmothers both had pianos in the basements. I'd be plinking things out. And I think my grandma heard me one day plinking out like this old tune, Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, and looked at my mom and said, you know, you need to get that boy some lessons. And that's pretty much it. Never looked back. And I always had an ear and always gravitated towards things that were a little more soulful. I live in Detroit, grew up, born in Detroit, and AM radio and all the FM stuff was playing really great R&B back then. Like, I mean, this is Motown, right?
Oh, yeah.
And there's still an amazing scene here. But those were my influences. That, and my grandmother was Kentucky gospel, and all that real gospel stuff is deep in me, which is that's blues and funk too, right? That's where this has all come from. I was gigging by the time I was 14, and it was in our own original bands. I was in a band called Second Self in the 80s. I got signed. I pulled out just as the signing was going down. I was kind of burnt out at the time. I went in the 90s and was in a band called Skeleton Crew, another one we got signed. And a little factoid, we beat Beyonce on Star Search in 1992.
Ooh.
And when I was a Skeleton Crew, she lost. And then she featured us, my band, in her video in like 2014 out of the blue. She just showed little clips of us beating her on Star Search. It was apparently a life-defining moment for her. She said,
"You can rest easy now."
Star Search. That brings me back. Wow.
Oh my God. Yeah, that was just a few years before Pilotwings.
Wow.
But I've been in high tech and music pretty much since I put a synthesizer in my lap when I was 14, and have never looked back. Love it. Great stuff. Mini Moog synthesizer, by the way, for you music geeks. Mini Moog, that was the jam.
Well, that's great. We were actually going to ask about, well, before we get into the hardware and your setup and stuff, what was your approach to writing the music for this game specifically? Or maybe music in general, even.
Groove. For the game, it was definitely, I wanted it to be groove based. I played video games, so I know how long tracks go, right? And we all have the Mario theme stuck in our soul for the rest of our life because the hours we spent playing Mario, right? The first one, the NES version. But I thought, if you're going to listen to something over and over, it should have something behind it, that even non-melodic, that just kind of get you moving a little bit, you know? And so I started putting together bass and drum grooves as the core of a lot of those tracks. I always wanted there to be some kind of a groove. I mean, there's a few that don't, like Cannonball. It's like dun, 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 dun. That one's obviously not a groovy song.
Right.
But it was a fun song. But pretty much everything else in there has a backbone in it. That was my approach, I think. It just make it feel good.
So you start with a bass, or you have some lick in your head that kind of get going on, and then you add on to that, or how do you?
That's a good question. Where things start, bass was very important to me. I love bass, and a lot of those early systems didn't have a lot of bass in them. I put a real bass, like I sampled a jazz bass through an amp to get the tone that's in Pilotwings, even though it's only a few hits, a few notes. I wanted that to be at the core of things, but I don't know if the song started with bass drums every time. You just kind of noodle, right? The first time I wrote the songs, I had a Kurzweil K2500 for you music geeks out there, and I was just using whatever patches were on there to write songs. And it quickly became apparent after my first meeting, like, okay, this is great, but you're going to have a limitation on how many sounds you can use because you have this 800K, everything's got to fit in. And that just blew my mind. I went home going, oh my God, I have to rethink how I'm going to do this, because it all every sound I make has to be reusable, has to be usable for all the tracks. Otherwise I can't include it. I just don't have the memory to do so, Which is
funny, because I think 800K was actually, at the time, was probably still a lot, but it was still very limiting,
I don't know, man. MP3 at the time, MP3 had just kind of come out, and they were like 4 meg, right?
That's true.
For one song, it's 4 meg. I have 800K for like 30 songs or whatever it ended up being, and all the sounds to make it,
That's a good point.
Let me ask you a little quick bridge question, because you mentioned, you've been doing music forever. You've been a sound guy for ages. There's kind of like a piece of the story I'd like to hear is like, how did the music kind of get you involved in tech? Was there a direct line there, or, yeah?
I think it really was synthesizers that started it out, right? I mean, that was my introduction to electronics and recording. Second Self, that was my first exposure to a really nice recording studio, and I was 18 walking into this multi-track, and you see the 2-inch and all the gear, and I had maybe 4 years of programming synthesizers at that point. You really couldn't afford your own PCs back then. It was just starting to become affordable, so I didn't have a home experience yet with a computer, but I was pretty hooked. And you don't realize that which is why when I got involved with Paradigm and the company that formed Paradigm, I was not really feeling confident that I could work with some of these people. I had this idea they were all in white lab coats and, knew more. But in reality, I had been, at that point, 10 years of experience in digital music that most people didn't, or analog music. But that was my introduction to high tech. It all came through music. And I went certainly beyond music into my high tech, but that's, I think, where it started.
That's a great point. And I think to that degree, like a lot of people in tech really actually, people think, oh, they have 15 years experience doing this. Everybody's just barely figuring it out at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like, we're just guessing.
But I do want to give a little bit of credence to what you're saying. Like, I think for Brian and I, music has also been, it's a very strong through line in a lot of the stuff that we've done. I mean, it's taken us a lot of places. We've learned a ton from it. It's one of these skill sets that doesn't necessarily seem like it'd be like, oh, right, obviously technology, but they're so interwoven that.
Especially now.
Yeah. Especially now.
We couldn't afford PCs back then. I had my first, I was working on a Mac 2 in sometime in the 90s, but in the 80s, you couldn't make music yet at home, right? But now you can do everything in your basement.
Yeah.
So if you're a musician, I guarantee you have a computer and you're figuring how to record your own music or write your own sounds or whatever you're doing with it. Music is your intro to technology if you're a musician.
Ian records in his garage, that's right.
Yeah, that's Studio B. I'm currently in Studio A, which is my den, my living room.
It's funny you said that it's computers were so expensive we couldn't afford one, but now you almost can't afford to live without one, right?
I know, right?
It's totally flipped.
Changed so much.
Let's jump into our next track here. This is Rocket Belt from Pilotwings 64.
That was Rocket Belt from Pilotwings 64, composed by Dan Hess. And there's actually an interesting story here. Dan sent us a demo track, which is the basis of this. This is before all of that compression and crunching it down to fit into the N64. It was a little bit more of a lush, kind of rich sound. It still sounds awesome on the N64.
Let's listen to that.
But yeah, let's take a listen.
On the rock side, funk rock, but that's where the thing came from. Then I just ripped it for Rocket Belt for the game.
Oh,
thanks for that wave file. That's my new alarm clock.
That's good. I got to say, when I first heard this, I was listening to a lot of jazz, a lot of funk at the time in high school, and when I heard this immediately made me feel like, wow, Dan Hess must have been listening to the Meters a lot.
Oh my God, that's like one of my gods of music.
I was just
Meters.
gonna say this.
Just feels like so perfect, and like I love this track. It's a great track.
Brothers Groove, they're just amazing.
They're an amazing
when
band.
I heard Sissy Strut, it was just like a match made in heaven.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you talking about? Where does this music come from?
Let's cover Sissy Strut, dude. Let's do it.
Let's do our own version.
You guys
my God. You heard it here.
Oh my God. We definitely are going to do something together.
So, it's all scatting.
So what kind of music were you listening to at the time?
During the Pilotwings thing?
Yeah.
Or like, God, you know what? We were writing music, so I wasn't really listening, which is crazy. So much of the 90s music scene I was unaware of until later, because I was just writing, and I was a dad, right? And I still am, of course, but my boys were, let's see, in 96, Tyler was 7, and Dylan was just born. So I was busy, I was busy dad doing my things. And the only time I had, I was in a project writing. Once a week we get together and just write songs, and man, I miss that. These guys were so incredible. They're all gifted songwriters and performers, and that's what we were into, our own stuff, just creating for ourselves, making ourselves happy, So I really don't have a good answer on that. I'll say I remember when, God, this must have been late 90s, but when what's Jacob Dylan's band called? The Wallflowers came out. That hit me pretty hard. I don't know why, but that first track came out. I'm like, wow, this is organic. There's some real music going on here. There's so many great 90s bands now reflecting on it, but all my roots are still there. Like we were talking about earlier, all the Sly and the Family Stone was huge for me as a kid. I grew up on Motown. God, I'm brain fart now, but 70s soul.
Did you pull any inspiration, or did you listen to some stuff from the original by Soyo Oka? I did not play that game, so I was exposed to it when we were creating this game, and I'm like, I couldn't do what Soyo Oka did. I listened. I'm like, I can't. I try to do justice to the intro. We took the original. Wada-san, who was the director, said he wanted to tie in the old games to the new. He said, why don't you take and do your own arrangement of the intro? So that's da 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 da.
but our minds are so differently musically, and I just, it blew me away what she was able to do, like on that first Nintendo system. But I wasn't familiar with it at the time until we started working on the game. And people, I remember when the game came out, and somebody had said that there were somebody else had credit on the game. I had forgotten all about the intro, and I had sent it an interview. It might have been probably the one I did with the Nintendo Life, that there was nobody else that worked on the game, which is true. I mean, I was the only one that, but absolutely, it was Soyo's track that was the track I arranged for the intro. All that stuff. So,
I mean, in fairness, I was listening to the Pilotwings Resort soundtrack, and they definitely were lifting some ideas from what you did. So, it's just standing on the shoulders of giants, right?
That's funny.
Absolutely.
I haven't heard it, but I've heard the same comment.
You haven't
I
heard
wish
it.
they would have
You gotta
reached
go back
out.
and listen.
Okay,
I
so
haven't.
we have a bit of an in-joke in our podcast Discord. What's your opinion on the Rippingtons? We're huge fans, but I feel like you might have an opinion on it.
Wow. I'm not familiar.
Oh, they're like the quintessential, I don't know, like dad smooth jazz band. They're amazing.
Elevator
way.
music band.
They
No
are
way.
America's Cassiopeia.
They're
Okay, I'm Googling these guys right now.
I saw them live. I went almost as a joke, and I was blown away. This was like 3 years ago.
Do you ever watch the Weather Channel?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so funny. Come on. That's what they're doing. But they do that live?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. No, they were the
that's
Weather
cool.
Channel house
Yeah,
band
literally.
in the mid-90s. Literally.
Come on.
I thought that
Oh,
might have
yeah.
been something that you kind of
I
just
got
like
them on my list right here, right
secretly-
now.
Adding to the list.
Oh,
You know,
well,
I don't even know why some of that stuff came out like that, like for the game. It really wasn't going for like a smooth jazz thing or anything. But by the way, if you could listen to the 8-bit big band version of Pilotwings 64, their version of Birdman is pretty stellar, and it's totally talk about smooth jazz. He went there with it. Charlie Rosen, what a talent! Like, I just mind-numbing the work they've done, and he's arranged. Genius. But I was, and I thought about that. I really didn't intend to make anything that was smooth jazz. I mean, that wasn't my intention. But I guess the sounds I was using too kind of lent itself, and had a little groovy bass, and it makes sense. It makes sense.
Absolutely.
That's a takeaway though. When you guys hear some of these songs, that's what you're thinking, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of smooth. It's funny.
Of course.
I know, right? I just honestly that it kind of just accidentally happened that way.
Like I was telling you, man, I try and take Birdman, and it's like, let's do it as the white dude George Benson as much as possible.
Oh, your version is really good.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
We will be hearing from that.
We'll definitely get to all. There's so much to talk about with Birdman, but let's get into our next track. This is Gyrocopter.
That was probably one of my least favorite. I'll tell you. When we come back, I'll tell you. I got to answer because people always say, "Hey, you stole that line from Kool and the Gang," and you know what? Oh God, what is it? It's the celebration thing, and yeah, it's the same melody. I mean, those things are floating around your head, but it actually, right? That's the line from. Da, 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 da. That's from the game, right? But that's
Celebration, yeah.
Bump, 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 but
yeah.
But when I was before Celebration was ever written, that actually came from a song that I had written, one of the first songs ever, and it was like this kind of a frog rock thing, and that's where I was taking it from. But God knows, all that stuff's all floating around in my brain. So yeah,
it just bounces around. I mean, I definitely, we've heard this from composers that it's like sometimes something will be there in, I don't know, 20 years, and like I'll just put it into a track, and then I kind of forgot that it was something that I was listening to and whatever.
Yeah.
It's not intentional, you know.
No, it's floating around your brain, and that's a lot of times you'll write something, you're like, this is actually good. It's probably not mine. It probably came from something else. I hope I don't get sued.
Oh, that's great. That was Gyrocopter from Pilotwings 64. Yeah, this is a great track. I absolutely. It's a lot different than some of the other tracks I've already heard, though.
Yeah, I think it's the only one that's like that on the. It had that danger. It needed a little bit more danger. There was nothing else in the game that was like, what's that giant guy you were trying to kill? Do you guys remember? It was like a Nintendo figure that you were shooting rockets at. Do you remember that? You're like in a giant.
I was bad at the game, so I don't remember.
Good.
Did you ever make it this far?
But anyways, you had to shoot rockets.
It
was like the only game that was like it, like this giant dude. Anyways, I had to have a little more of that.
Yeah, what was that?
Right. The name, I know.
There's like 20 people right now screaming at their phones, like telling us.
I know. People hate listening to podcasts where like we don't have the answer and they know it.
I'm sorry, you guys.
Just fix it in post.
Right. Make it sound like we knew what we were talking about.
Hey,
that's anyways why it sounds like it does.
I want to jump into some questions from good friend of the show, Ed, of VG Embassy. He said, with background in creating and programming audio for simulations and the two games you worked on being scaled down simulations themselves, have you taken an interest in how others are approaching audio for games like Microsoft Flight Sim or American Truck Simulator in the modern era?
You know, I have not even thought about how they're approaching music in those. I didn't know they added music to Microsoft Flight Simulator. It must be really chill, right?
It is.
You know,
sounds a lot like Birdman. Let's be honest.
It's just wow, no,
Birdman.
I wouldn't even have thought that would be a thing, but that's cool. You know, people ask me too, how do you get into video game music or whatever? And I thought, well, back then it was really difficult, but now there are literally thousands and thousands of games. Even this is a perfect example: Farming Simulator and Flight Simulator. I wouldn't even have thought that would have been an opportunity, but there you go. And all the phone games, and if there's ever a time to get into video game music, this is it. You know, sorry, I don't have much of a better answer for that question, but I do pay attention to how music is used, and how interactive it could be now. Because I'm really jealous. We really had all these great ideas for doing interactive music in the games based on what you were doing in the game. And not only was there not enough room often on the cartridge to support that, but they didn't have the AI that was really needed to do that properly too, right? And you can do that now. Yeah, you can have things respond to what you're doing in the game musically. That's cool.
Right, and the physics and stuff. As a follow-up to Ed's question, he also said, like, either, you know, back in the day or presently, is there any sim game, you know, because you did Pilotwings and you were very successful at you know, getting that soundtrack out. Was there anything else in that sim genre that you would have liked to work on, like aquatic or farming or
Civilization?
You know, Civilization.
Oh, yeah.
That was the one that I remember for sure.
Oh, that was my jam too.
I think I was playing that on, what was it, Sega Genesis? I don't remember when that game came out, but I remember just being all about it. Like, it was just mind blowing. You know, you couldn't stop playing it. Yeah, that would have been a great one to work on. Plus, it's one of those games that just keeps going. You know, the music had to be just right. I do appreciate guys who can write like that, you know, because you're going to be playing for at least an hour. And you don't want something annoying that you have to go and, oh God, I gotta get rid of this track. It's driving me crazy. And I just take it out. So that would be, I think, a challenge to write something for a sim game.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how long that track's going to be playing.
We actually talked to some guys who wrote for a game called Airport CEO, and they were exactly talking about that challenge about how do you keep something somewhat interesting that doesn't loop too often, but doesn't take you like 6 years to write.
Yeah, and also not interesting enough to where it pulls you away from the...
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Not interesting enough. That's...
It's tough.
Microsoft Flight Simulator. You're actually trying to land a plane. Probably shouldn't be too distracted by bobbing your head or something. I get it.
Well, we weren't sure we would have time to play skydiving, but I really want to get into it.
It's one of my favorite tracks.
I love this track.
I know. That's why I'm like, please, let's play it. All right, this is skydiving from Pilotwings 64. So that was Skydiving, composed by Dan Hess.
Love it. That's one of my favorite tracks.
Yeah, it's one of
which is a lot of fun to do.
Yeah,
Me too.
Another meters feeling for me. Like it's really
Brian
got that.
Yeah, he was singing some meters to me. Do you want to do it again on show, Brian?
It's the what was the track? I forgot the lyrics. Like, give it what you can, give it what you can.
Yeah.
Nice.
I forgot what this track was, but I'm sure it was something
You're
like
in
that.
the band, Brian.
Thanks,
dude.
The reunion band.
Oh man, the funky meters.
Yeah,
those are the Neville brothers. You know that, right?
Yeah.
Well, that's good stuff, man. Sick.
Oh yeah, they're. I mean, I got like all their stuff. I still listen to it all the time. Norm asks for another game that you worked on for F1 Grand Prix. The guitar elements sounded natural considering they were coming out of the N64, which is funny.
That was not easy. I did not want to do that for that game. Like, I got pulled into F1 and became a fan of Formula One through the game. But I knew enough at the time that it was more of a world thing. Americans really had no clue what Formula One was about. They were all about Indy and NASCAR, right?
Yep.
And if you look at an Indy car, it's like, oh, it's the same. No, it's not the same. It's absolutely not the same sport. And but at the time, I thought techno would be what a perfect opportunity to make a techno game. I mean, that's was happening in 1998. 97, whenever we were doing this game, and I created some tracks for it and some more syntho stuff, and I thought for sure that was what they would want. But the Japanese development team, this was not Nintendo, this was Video Systems, I think, was the developer on that, and they had very strong ideas, like you were mentioning, Gene, earlier, about how they wanted things to be, and they're like, no, we want American rock and roll, American guitars and drums, and they had all these tracks they wanted to do. And I tried really hard to dissuade them because guitars do not transcend well. Like me trying to play a guitar sound on a keyboard always sounds like some really cheesy 80s synth. It's just really bad. I really didn't want to do it that way, but that's what I had to do. So
We have a clip here from we don't have
know what
track
the actual
names.
file name
yeah,
is, but
it's like
yeah,
track 18 or something like that. So
Yeah, it kind of sounds like an early 90s guitar grunge rock thing, which sounds really cool.
oh my God. Some of my favorite tracks in there were probably, I think it was the paddock when you were like getting your car ready. Because I was trying to make something that's going to pump you up. Okay, I'm getting ready to get in this race. You know, I'm putting what I need on my car and I'm going to hit out the track. That one's pretty good. The track intro is pretty good. The game intro is pretty good. After that, I tell you what, the versions that are on, that wasn't even a track in the game. So somebody in game development left a bunch of stuff on that was some of my demo sequences when I was testing the system. I don't even know what that is, but
it's a good sign.
There's a bunch of songs in there that tracks that were never in the game, and somebody left them on the cartridge. And then when people did whatever they do to get the songs off it, they just found them.
They dumped them all. Yeah,
because I remember working with El Spiro, and she had sent me all these tracks. She goes, what are these things? And I said, I mean, literally my sound test was on there from me like hitting a bass note over and over, and I was testing it.
I remember that. Yeah, it's like
somebody left all that stuff on the cartridge. What are you guys doing to me? Oh my god! So I don't even know what you're listening to right there.
I gotta say, man, I really like the echo on this guitar lead.
This is how bad that stuff was. I needed it really badly, so I had to just basically copy the track and keep moving it over. Whatever. That's how I made my own echoes. Right? That's like two different
cool
copies.
Though, you got like the genuine like tape echo effect there too.
It is exactly what it is. Yeah, what did you had to do back then?
No, it's cool. I'm not being facetious, by the way. It's you got to take everything with the time and the technical limitations from which it was.
Oh my God,
and,
you do.
Yeah.
It's still really cool.
Thanks. That's one thing that bothers me is that all these tracks don't sound right.
Let me actually just really quick. You mentioned techno. I wanted to grab, because you shared with us one of the tracks from the PS2 game. You didn't end up working on it, right? The Spy Hunter game?
No, I didn't. There's a story to that.
There's a demo track. I think it's called M2. I don't know what it actually is called, but this is the one you shared with us. It's very techno-y. I think can give you a chance to relive those memories a little bit.
Oh yeah, that's how I thought the game should be. Yeah, that too. I thought that'd be like night driving in the game. I don't know if you're familiar with the old Spy Hunter game, but it was like a look down.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. So they were actually turning this into a 3D game, and this was a huge game for Wes Hoffman and I. He's one of the founders of Paradigm. And so he's like, dude, we're doing Spy Hunter. You got to do this. So absolutely. I was so excited about it. But this is probably their third game for Nintendo. No, this was their first for Sony. Right. It was their first PlayStation game. But we'd been making games, and I was just like the de facto, this is the guy that's going to do our soundtracks guy. And then they thought, well, we're going to open this up now to bids. Well, that's fine with that. And I put my bid in for Spy Hunter, knowing what it actually took to create a video game. And most people didn't back then. They thought, I just write some songs, I submit them, I'm done. And wouldn't that be great if that's how it was? Because that was 10%. That was the fun part. But I was down there for months integrating, right? And also, you don't get to choose which songs go in the game, right? So you're writing songs and they have to be accepted. And that's what some of these guys don't get. Well, I wrote it. Well, that's great. We didn't like it. Write another one. Write another. Write another. Like Birdman, I must have written 30 songs. I couldn't get it right. He just didn't like it. It's a great song or whatever, like it, not Birdman. And there's a whole story to that. But that's what you deal with, right? You have to write until they're accepted. And then at that point, you have to create them and integrate them into the game. And you can't leave. Like, you have to make it. Nobody else is going to do that for you.
You're on the hook.
That's the job.
Yeah.
So knowing all that and all the months and basically a year of my life that's going to go into this, I put a bid in. And Dave Gatchell, who was the president of the company, called me and said, hey, just want to let you know, we've gotten some very competitive bids in against you. And are you willing to come down? I said, no, Dave. I mean, it's a pretty conservative bid I gave you. I know there's going to be things that I haven't even thought about that are going to keep me down there for months on end. No, that's what it takes, right, to do this. So they end up going with another composer, and I did warn them. I said, if you get somebody else, I asked him, how competitive, what are you looking for? He goes, well, some of them are like half of what you bid. I said, if you get somebody for that half of what I bid, I guarantee you they are not going to deliver. They're not going to be down there integrating. They're going to write some songs and send them to you, and you're going to be stuck. Well, guess what? A year later, that's exactly what happened. And they called me, hey, can you come down and fix this? Nope. Nope.
And
not my nightmare. Not doing it.
The thing
Tale
is,
as old as time.
even now, with all of the middleware and how much generally easier it's gotten, pretty much every composer we talk to, that is a component of their job. At least 20 to 30% is figuring out how to integrate it. Even the basic, it's essentially like playing in the background. They still have to figure these things out. Actually, that track shouldn't be playing here. You're like, it's never going away. It's part of the game dev process.
And you can't assume those things. You here, just turn it off. Then you listen to what they did with it. Wait a second. No, that doesn't play there.
Yeah.
What are you doing? That doesn't. You have to be involved. You have to be day to day. I would go home and write a bunch of tunes. Then I would live down there for weeks on end and live with the team. And by the way, all the teams I worked on, especially Pilotwings, because it was such an important thing for this company. Brand new company. We just spun off from Paradigm Simulation into Paradigm Entertainment. And when it became apparent that we were probably not going to make launch at the current rate of production, we kept stealing more people from Paradigm Simulation and bringing them up to our floor. It was and these people are the best. Like, this team was just brilliant. We didn't have hardware. There was no Nintendo 64 yet. We were just working on simulated in software environment that was simulating what the hardware was going to be.
Wow.
So you didn't even have like a dev kit or anything?
No, we not till later.
Okay.
I remember we did at the very end. I also remember when they brought us. I think they needed to give us a little kick in the ass because they realized at one point we were the only manufacturer that was going to be able to produce if we were able to.
Yeah.
Everybody else was like, never going to happen. So the entire focus of Nintendo was on our little company. This has to work, guys. And I'd say we were about halfway into development cycle, maybe a little more than that. And the guy literally flew in from Japan with a briefcase, handcuffed to his arm, like in a movie.
Wow.
And guess what was in it? It was the ROM for Super Mario 64.
Wow.
Because think about it, we're creating a game, but we have no frame of reference. Like, what can this system do? We don't know. We're just building our own. It's the first one we've ever seen.
Wow.
And I heard that track. It was mind-numbing what was going on. Just magical. Seeing that for the first time, and I'm thinking to myself, this is going to be so huge. Like, this world doesn't know what it has coming. These kids are going to freak out.
We did.
Like, you guys both experienced it, so you all did it.
And that's going to lead us into our next section. I think everybody has been skipping the rest of this episode to get to here because we're about to talk about Birdman.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is the track that let's play the track and then we'll come back and talk about it.
All right.
All right, that was Birdman from Pilotwings 64, composed by Dan Hess.
Yeah, I have to give some credit to Wada-san for pushing me to come up with something that was perfect for that part of the game. I apparently didn't know because I wrote so many that he rejected.
So what were some of the other ones that you turned down?
Oh, God, I don't even know. I mean, we're talking about 1996. I was just writing. I had the palette of sounds, right? That was I will say I did create a new sound specifically for Birdman once I wrote it because it needed like this real lushness to it that none of the other tracks had. And I found a way to squeeze. I think I might even have gone to the dev team and asked for a little more room in my 800. Maybe I have 850 now because I wanted to add some kind of a real thick pad or some synthy thing that I want to put in there. But and this story's been told before, so I apologize if you heard it before. But Wada-san, the director of the game, had told me he wanted a track that was floaty, fluffy. This was my direction. And with that in mind, I wrote track after track after track, and he would just kind of shake his head, no. And it was one of the last tracks I did. Just because I couldn't find it, and I my good friend Mike Engeldinger, who is another principal of the company, he said, "Hey, just move into my office for a while. Just come right here. Get a different scene," because I was in a small office down the hall set up. So I moved my whole rig into his office, brought my speakers, but primarily working on headphones because he's coding on the game. And I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna chill. I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm just gonna think chill, think floaty, and I started just vibing on some different stuff, letting just stuff come out. And I started playing something, and to my mind, it sounded like a Barry White track. All we needed was Barry to come, hey, baby, come on, and it would have been done. And I'm just laughing to myself, and I'm like, you have to hear this. So I flicked it on the speakers and played it for him, and we're just getting off on this track. And Wada-san just happened to be walking by the hall and stopped in the door. And I looked over at him, and he was flapping his arms and smiling. Like, this is Birdman? Because, it was that.
Oh, man.
That's what it was, right? And I just would have never guessed that he would have accepted that. So at least once I had that little nugget, then I could expand it from there. And that's how Birdman came. And one more thing, I did bring this up the other day on a different podcast, but with Ian.
Yeah.
And there was something we had the game put together, when I had the song put together. Basically, in my mind, it was this jazzy soul vibe with different instruments coming in, taking their solos, right? That's really what that different melodies come in, right? It's not the same melody. It comes back, but every instrument takes a little different take on the melody, right? And I asked the developers, I said, hey, you guys have that applause track, right? So when you do something you're supposed to do in the game properly, you hit a ring, it goes, woo, and then you get like some clapping, right? I go, can we put that clapping on after each solo? And he's like, hell yeah. So he codes it in, right? And it cracked me up. It was my personal joke, right? And then years later, I found out these kids were playing the game wondering, like, what did I just do? That people started clapping. They thought that they had done something in the game, and they couldn't make it happen again. They never figured out that it was the
solo.
Audience clapping the solo.
That's amazing, man. You should keep that going where people don't know, so we can get a Summoning Salt like video where people are trying to figure out like what did they have to do to perfect the game.
We'll just cut all of this out and just keep the mystery.
You should. You really should, because if they could figure it out, then I would be impressed. I would be impressed.
I'm going to ask this question. I'm going to pose it to Ian first because we have a very special reason for asking it. So one of our listeners asked, did you ever think Birdman would be the catalyst for awakening a love of smooth jazz in millions of kids across the world? Ian, obviously you're here because you made a remix of Birdman or a cover of Birdman, and we'll be playing that at the end of the show. I don't know. tell us what your experiences were here.
Well, my experience is kind of twofold. One, being a child of the 90s and listening to it and realizing that it had awakened something deep inside me, like all those YouTube comments tell Dan. The grossest ones he probably gets on these covers. And then also just, going to school and studying music under different teachers who would always, they push jazz on you. And, it sunk its teeth in me because, like a lot of kids, like, oh, it sounds like Mario Kart music. And it's like forgetting that so many composers are, like Dan said, inspired by people like the Meters or whoever had come before. So you start to find out who your idols listen to a little bit. And, we do have this whole generation of people that are 25 to 40 who love this stuff because now you can unironically love jazz and funk music because you have all these groups, like Wolfpack and the new generation of people like your Corey Wongs, or there's lots of names people probably sitting there. You're forgetting this guy and that, but all the people at NAMM that are playing it up every year and at the Hammond booth, we all owe Dan.
Right. if that is true, if somehow I brought people into like funk and jazz, then that's a huge compliment for me. So thank you.
You got to go to a MAG event, dude. Go to MAGFest or MAGWest, and trust me, a lot of people are going to be on you awkwardly. Just
you know what?
Wanting to know.
I'm going. I got invited by the coordinator, and I couldn't go the first year, and then COVID, put other things in our life for a while. But I can't go this. There's one coming up in January.
A couple of weeks, or when this airs in a week.
Okay, but next time I'm really going because I just hear great things about it.
Well, let us know when you go,
I'll
and then we'll
talk
have
to my
go
people
too.
Because
Nice.
you're an excellent performer, and like everyone, I swear to God, will go wild.
Yeah,
you will kill
God.
there.
Yeah.
I mean,
They
not
will
literally,
lose their
but-
mind. You'll see like a dude in a smelly Pikachu costume losing it.
or somebody with like giant bird wings. They'll be like, I swear it's gonna happen.
They're going to be throwing their bird wings on you.
Yeah, somebody's going to
oh
be
my
peeking. They won't even
God.
realize it's really you. They're going to think they're still in the hot tub.
Oh my God.
Oh, man.
I would love to have like a live band do something like Birdman, have flute player and have organ going and
Dude, they're all
bass
there.
player,
There's so
drums.
many people.
If you put it out
So
into the
cool.
world, it will happen. You don't even have to try. Just say, I'm thinking about doing this. People are going to be emailing you constantly.
I'll get you a whole backline, dude. Tell me what to do for you.
That's across the country for you guys too, isn't it?
Oh,
Yeah, but it's a tentpole event. I haven't gone in a couple of years for obvious reasons, but I think 2023, I guess, since it's technically in January of 22, I'm going to try to make it out.
yeah.
Definitely.
Man. By the way, shout out to Snarky Puppy.
Thank you.
That band is absolutely mind-blowing, incredible. Just everything they do is, and Jacob Collier, another.
Yep.
I'm a total music geek, so. Anyways, just had to throw those out there. People ask me all the time, "What do you listen to now?" And those are two examples of things I put on. So
I'll have to put
Manifest
some
it, Dan. We're going to see Michael League in Finland at some point playing bass to
come
hang
on.
glider.
Oh my God.
All right. I want to ask
What
you
are
a
we gonna
couple more
ask him?
questions, but before we do that, let's jump into another track. This is Replay, composed by Dan Hess.
This one actually does kind of sound smooth jazz a little bit. Is this that? Is that the one we're talking about?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
and you can just play it for us if you'd like. We don't have to listen to it.
Sorry.
All right, that was
Oh my
Replay,
God.
composed by Dan Hess for Pilotwings 64.
What can I say? This track is awesome. Like, it really, like,
Hell yeah.
I lose a lot when I play these. I played the original Pilotwings and I lost a lot too, but they had some really nice lose music. So whether you win or lose, this still sounds great.
It's like, okay, you're not dead. You just didn't do great, but it's okay. We're going to groove for a while, and you're going to do it again, and all's good.
You didn't make par. It's fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right, exactly. It's all chill. It's all good.
So let's talk about some future stuff here. You got any upcoming projects you can tell us about, or anything like that?
You know, I do studio work, and I do, basically parts for other people's music. I've been on a technical project going on 2.5 years now that has unfortunately pulled me out of making music, other than some live performances, and I really miss it. I can't tell you how much I miss it. Like, I'm reaching out to my other songwriter friends. Hey, let's get together and write again, because it's like a giant hole in my heart right now. And I perform. I still do live stuff. At least I did.
Yeah, we definitely want to ask you about all that stuff, because it sounds like you've been gigging basically, the last 30 years or so.
Yeah, and I went into this crazy doing pianos thing 10 years ago, thinking it was a stopgap in between. I couldn't stop working, so I thought I got to do something on the weekends to make some money. My buddy's like, you got to check out this dueling pianos thing. Like, they're one of the buildings he owned. They had shows he was sponsoring, and he said there's hundreds of dollars of tips alone. Plus, they're flying them in, and we pay them good money. I went and looked at what these guys were doing. I thought, I can never do that. These guys are out of their minds. And have you guys seen the dueling piano show before?
I've seen a couple of them, actually. Yeah, they're pretty popular around here.
Yeah, there's something else, man. So that was me, 2009, thinking I was going to do it for 6 months, and that was 10, 11, 12 years ago. Crazy.
Wow.
But it's a weekend thing, but COVID's kind of made that very difficult, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So really, no, I have nothing going on the music creative like I should at this point. So sadly, nothing to report.
Yeah.
You sound like you had so much fun working on this soundtrack. I'm just really surprised that you didn't, and maybe there's other reasons behind it, but like, I'm surprised that you didn't pursue more game audio composition.
Well, I think the writing was on the wall for me when that bid I was telling you about for Spy Hunter. I mean, I thought all these kids are going to get into this, think they want to do video game music, and they're going to underbid it. They really don't understand. It's not just making music; it's a technical process. It's a long cycle, and I don't want to be making far less money trying to feed my family.
Yeah.
Right.
I have 2 boys and a wife at the time, so that was like I just saw it coming. And and you've heard of the sweatshops, right? We were working 100 plus hours a week doing this stuff. I loved it. I don't think I would have changed a thing, but I felt for the guys who were there, who were part of Paradigm, who had families in town. Like, when I was there, I lived there, right? So my life was whatever game we were working on.
Yeah.
But these guys had wives going, honey, are you ever going to be home for dinner? The kids haven't seen you for 3 months, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's rough.
There was that going on too. You had to really love it to be a part of it back then. And then that's kind of why I got out that, and I started another high-tech company. We did holographic 3D way before, like 3D without goggles. And I got so sucked into that that it took me completely out of the video game market at that time.
And, I'm sure that I'm not saying anything new here, but lots changed. Like, a lot of people working remote, and there's a lot of indie companies, and I'm just throwing it out there.
It's not gonna be. It may not be a main gig for you, but I know people are like, I got Dan Hess to write music for my band. It's something you can always think about.
Anything when if somebody has something out there they want me to work with on them, I'd be love to do it.
Seriously, Dan, we're all gonna echo the same thing. But if you just went on Twitter and was like, "Yo, it's me, Dan.
Oh, you're funny.
Somebody's going to have money and be like, here you go, sir. Play me off.
Well, when that happens, I'll step back in and write some music, but I honestly, this is still mind blowing to me. Just I'm sitting here talking to you guys about this from 1996.
Dude, it's mind blowing to me too. I mean,
are you kidding?
Someone procreated with me, and I'm talking to you.
I know.
Right now.
I woke up this morning. I'm like, wow. I'm going to talk to Dan Hess.
I did want to ask about this real quick because I know you have a Patreon and you've been, at least I know you said you've been busy lately, but a couple of years ago you put out your own arrangement of Birdman. We're not going to play the whole thing, maybe. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Maybe it'll sneak into the show. But we have a clip from that right now. Birdman Returns. I think I'll,
cool.
Insert track here.
Nice. That was a tough one to do because I wanted to take it a different direction, but I thought it might put some people off because so many people had written to me and said, please do this. And I thought, I'm just going to keep it really close to the original for at least the first quarter of it. And then I'll, rather than go synth with it, I'll go organic with it, you know, put some, and that's what it turned into, you know?
it's funny because we talked to Kobayashi-san about Panzer Dragoon Saga way at MagWest, like 2 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, man.
And she had said the same thing. She said it was really challenging to write, to remix or I guess revisit her old music because you have the diehard fans that don't want to see the change, but
You live up to the expectations that they have built up in their mind. Yeah.
But if you're not doing something at least somewhat faithful to the original sound, you're doing a disservice, or there's all sorts of different directions you can get pulled for that.
That's exactly the dilemma, right?
Yeah.
You're never going to please everybody. I mean, that's the thing at the end of the day. There's going to be someone who, well, you should have done it this way. I mean, like I love Gene, but I'll have an album done. He's like, switch the track order. I can't do it now. It's already out.
I know.
But that's the thing, right? Is like everyone's, it's good to take in all fan opinion and listen to it. But at the end of the day, man, you wrote that. That is you. That's the Dan Hess piece. So
yeah,
they wouldn't even be liking it if it wasn't for you. So do what you want.
Thanks.
Go out there and.
That was the only piece of criticism, Ian.
I was kidding. I have to. I can look at. You can't look at my face, but I can look at yours right now. So it's pretty great that I can just watch you sweat,
watch you blush.
I was really kind. Actually, we'll give you a chance to plug that album, but we do want to play one last track. This is Bravissimo. I don't know. Is this the staff roll? The credits?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
That song I was just telling Ian about this. I didn't know I had to write that song. That was like I was literally gonna fly out. I had a flight at 4:30 in the morning. It was 10 at night, 9 and 11 at night. I was saying goodbye to everybody, and somebody goes, "Wait, whoa, you're not done." What? Because I had my track
You're getting
list.
some sleep. You're going home. I don't think so.
You're like, what? You can't leave. And I said, I have everything. I checked everything off. I showed them my sheet. They're like, oh.
Oops.
Well, nobody added the credits roll on this sheet for some reason. Oh, what?
It's like that
literally
list that like the rest like kind of strings down and like you got like 10 more things, kind of accordion style.
It freaked me out because I had a flight out and I had been there for months at that point. I'm like, I'm making this plane. So I just reset my rack up and got my controller out. And I'm like, all right, what are we doing here? And then they're showing me the credit roll, and I just thought it should be festive. I was feeling festive. I'm like, I'm out of here. This is a done deal. It's a long
kind of like your fanfare.
year of work. So that's what that song is. It's like me just jamming, trying to be happy and festive,
All right, well, let's take a listen. This is Bravissimo.
That was Bravissimo, composed by Dan Hess for Pilotwings 64. And I honestly, this whole soundtrack has just got such a relaxed and awesome vibe. I mean, you may not be a Japanese composer, but you stand up with the best of them. You know, I've loved the soundtrack.
Oh, thanks, man.
You know, Dan, finding out that you're from Detroit was like when people found out Steely Dan wasn't from England.
Was that a thing that they thought they were from England? I don't know.
Yeah, a few people have been like, I mean, you know, look at these guys. They gotta be from London. And like, nah, man, that's all New York.
No, New York dudes get transplanted to LA in the 70s. Yeah.
Awesome.
Really.
So,
good stuff.
To wrap up here, we covered Pilotwings 64 and the N64, composed by Dan Hess. And if you want to know more about the show, you can find us online at pixelatedaudio.com for our show notes and the track lists. We're on Twitter and Discord. Make sure you don't join the Discord. There's a lot of good conversations. A lot of the questions we heard today were from our friends and fans on Discord.
Very cool.
Yeah, and if you're new to the show, make sure to check out some of our past episodes. We, as you know, folks who are avid listeners, we have a lot of interviews. In fact, the last 2 episodes before this had composer interviews on as well. It's just something we really love to do, and we're really glad we were able to bring Dan on. Honestly, this came together pretty quickly, but you know, it's turned out to a great show. Yeah. And also, you know, I want to give Ian a chance to say, because we're going to be ending the show here on his track. So, Ian, tell us a little bit about your projects, your thing, Birdman.
Yeah, hey, well, first I want to say big shout out to Dan for being here and for asking me to be along on this, and to Brian and Gene with Pixelated Audio. Join the Discord, everybody. I'm in like 50 servers. It's only one of 3 that I actively check. They got some good people in there. Yeah, I have an album coming. It is out.
Your album is out.
Yeah, hey, my album's out. It came out Friday, December 10th. It's called Exceptional Goblins. It's 12 ripping, chilling, jamming tracks of video game music rearrangements.
Yeah, man.
And one reviewer said that it hits a vibe of being drunk in the 90s watching the Weather Channel.
And that's me who said
that's
that.
Gene J. Band who said that. And yeah, it's got a rearrangement. Not a rearrangement, it's a homage, a straight up cover of Dan's Birdman's. And call it Ca-Caw, Brah, which will be
I love
played
that
here.
title.
I loved your Welcome to the Green Garden track on that. That is just amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate
track.
that. I gotta say, the one I'm excited for everyone now that they can digest it is to listen to Chimpin' Ain't Easy.
Chimpin' Ain't Easy.
That's a great title, too.
There's so many great titles. I can't say enough good things about Ian's album. I think when this airs, he'll have already done a live stream. We're recording now before it happens, but it will be up, and I will be there essentially giving everybody a round of high fives.
For some reason, whenever I think about this album, Ian, you posted something on, I think it was on Facebook like years ago, but it's like you wearing like short jean shorts or something. And he was like, today's like a jorts day, and I think like, wow, that goes with this album for me. Like, just works.
Oh yeah.
Hey man, you know, I really am all about jorts. I think they're great. And you can tell when I film music videos too, because if I'm wearing jorts, it's up through August.
Honestly, when you threw on that Link costume for your Zelda track, I wasn't even phased. I'm like, it's just Ian, and he just had in the closet somewhere.
Yeah, man, I got a whole pile of costumes here. The kids think it's natural. Like, he took my Yoshi hat. I'm like, first of all, it's my Yoshi hat. We're making the money back on that, right?
Kids go to their friend's house and they're like, so where's your dad's costumes?
They're like, oh yeah, that's not normal. That's not.
Dude, but do you have the Toad hat? Because
not yet. We got to get the Toad hat. That's the thing. If I do an arrangement, if I want to make a video, I got to start a couple weeks out. Like, all right, what can I Amazon Prime that looks passable enough? We don't spend above $50 on a costume. We don't have time for that. There's property taxes.
Awesome. Hey, well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today. It was great having you.
What a blast. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. And on that note, let's take a listen to this fabulous arrangement by Ian called Ca-Caw, Brah. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see everybody back in a few weeks for the next episode. Wait, we got to start recording,
I know,
guys.
I know. Well, we are recording.
Oh yeah. All right. You ready? Ooh,
I'm ready.
bring him that. All right.